So once again, hello everyone, and thank you for coming to this Black and Brilliant event. My name is Dr. Rihanna Rogers, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session. We have a wonderful group of panelists tonight, and it's really exciting to have them all speaking here. What you can see is from the screen in front of you, from left to right, we have Claudine Moore, founder and MD of Global PR, adjunct professor at NYU, Isaac Fennell, VP HR at Talent and Modal Business Associates, Inc., partner and consultant at Martin Bradley Consulting. We have Marissa Lee, career activist and founder for So Evolve. We have Melvin Wilson, founder and president of Solve Innovate Group. And we have Sandy Castro, president and co-founder of IC Stars. So before we begin, I'd like to explain a little bit about who Black and Brilliant is. And thank you for those who've returned, but those of you who are new, Black and Brilliant is an advocacy group for people of all backgrounds dedicated to creating a more diverse workforce. We're founded in New York in June of 2020, and today we're a professional network of individuals that make up a variety of people from across the United States and the globe. Black and Brilliant Advocacy Network, this is sponsored by the Specific Mentoring, Coaching, and Guidance Group. So we want to thank you for being here, everyone. And so what I wanted to do first is give you a little bit of an outline. We're going to have a little bit of an introduction right now, and then we're really going to focus on the panelists and their expertise. So when we begin, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves very briefly, and I'm going to pose a question. So I'm taking down this PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to pose a question to the audience as well as to our panelists. So let's get started with that. So we're talking about this idea of developing traits to break through top talent. As you know, people have seen posts that have come on LinkedIn, as well as in the Black and Brilliant Advocacy Group, about the fact that people believe that there isn't a pipeline of Black and brilliant talent, as well as BIPOC peoples who have expert knowledge in areas that could move them and advance their career. So what we're going to be talking about today is, if we really want to break through that middle, if we want to find that place to be successful BIPOC peoples, what do we need to do? So the first question that you're going to see appear is, what traits do you associate with being top talent? I'm going to share this poll with everyone so that you can join in and cast your votes. So you'll see that appearing on your screen. But I'm going to ask each one of our panelists first to introduce themselves and then to answer that question. What are the traits that you need to be top talent? Let's get started with Marissa.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening. I'm so excited to be here and be able to share my experience and expertise with you all. Just a little bit about myself. I am the founder of So Evolve LLC, which is an organization focused on helping companies to be able to address contemporary customer issues, workforce experience challenges, and career development opportunities within their organization. I also work as a global HR business partner as well. So I have spent a lot of time working with organizations and dealing with top talent. And so when I think about traits that are necessary to be classified as a top talent, all the ones that are listed on this poll are significant. And they are essential in being able to help you be able to position yourself in the organization. I would also add to ones that aren't on there, like being able to have a strategic mindset, to be able to deal with ambiguity, to understand how to build relationships and be able to connect with people in the organization. Because a part of being a top talent is the organization sees you as an individual that is going to help them be successful as you continue to go forward. So you have to be able to hone those different skills as you get settled into that role. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing more with you all later.
Great, thank you, Marissa. Melvin, can you go next?
Sure. Mel Wilson, I am the founder and president over at Solve Innovation Group. We're a group of strategists and I'll just say thinkers, a couple of folks that have worked at research organizations and think tanks, but we mainly try to get more companies and people of color into everything involving tech and media. And we've been at that for the last 5 years. after leaving, I'll just call it the big agency holding company infrastructure that we were all a part of previously.
Great, thank you. So what are your thoughts about the traits that you need to be a top talent?
I would probably say that curious is one of the more important ones that I always have, because I'll just say from my background, a lot of it was in advertising and tech. I'd probably say before that, I thought I was going to be an architect, but the whole idea of being curious about how things work together, how they mesh together, what your part is to play and what other people's are is a good way to kind of become one of the top talents, because you learn really quick from a management standpoint, whether it's project management or people management. That's most of the job, figuring out how everything messes together so you can get a final product. So I'd probably say curious is a big portion of that.
Thanks, Melvin. Claudine, what are your thoughts?
Hi, good evening. So again, thank you to the Black and Brilliant Advocacy Group for inviting me to speak this evening. My name is Claudine Moore. I'm the MD and founder of Seymour Media International Public Relations, and we are a PR agency that works from the access of US, UK, and African markets. And we work with, and we have worked and continue to work with leaders, whether they're with a big global heritage company, right across the gamut to the founders of African startups or African-focused startups. So I'm delighted to speak about the how to position yourself as top talent, because at all levels, it's key to be able to know how to navigate the corporate and business world so that you can always position yourself from a place of strength. And that leads me to the trait from the list that you presented, Rihanna, one of the most important traits. I think all those traits were actually really important, but if I was to tease one out, I would say resilience. I think, you know, the higher you climb as a leader, the more you have to take on board, and the more sort of vulnerable you are to criticism, to feedback, to owning your projects, owning the business, owning the development of the business. And with that can come a lot jabs, and with that can come a lot of responsibility. And resilience is one of the key traits, I think, both in business and in life, really. So that's what I would choose.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to end the polling because I think it'll be interesting to see what people's thoughts are as we move to our next panelists. So you can see the results that we have on the screen here. And the most highest result is resourcefulness, which is interesting. It relates to what Claudine just mentioned. I wanted to then move to Isaac. Now that we have some of the results from what the audience has said, you can see the highest areas are creativity, resourcefulness. You see in close second, resilient and productive. Isaac, do you agree with these, or do you think there are other ones?
Well, actually, I absolutely do agree. But first, thank you for inviting me to sit on the panel this afternoon. My name is Isaac Fennell. I'm the VP of HR and Talent at Moldable Business Associates. We're here based in New York City, and it's an agency firm that focuses on recruiting high-end top talent in the medical technology space. So transitioning right back to the poll, I was actually going to pick resourcefulness. I think all of the skill sets that's listed on the listing here, plus one that's probably not listed, I'm going to say being humble, is all critical to being top talent. But more importantly, being a diverse HR professional in many different industries, I think what we all need to do in order to position ourselves as top talent is understand what your business leaders at your organization, what they value as top talent. We can have all of these traits, but if your business leader do not value these traits as top talent, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to break through that ceiling. So be very clear and aware of what top talent means to your organization, what it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Isaac. Sandy, what are your thoughts? You're on mute right now.
Sorry. Hi, and thanks. It really is great to be here with everybody. My name is Sandy Castro. I'm the president and co-founder of IC Stars. We're a technology leadership and business training organization that was founded over 20 years ago, based in Chicago. And in a nutshell, we find talent, we train talent, and we put talent to work in technology careers. The thing that's unique about IC Stars is that we use the systems thinking and process and methodology that's embedded in doing technology work to also develop community leaders. So get folks great jobs in IT, but then also think about IT as solving problems and building solutions. What if we became the ones who solve the problems and build the solutions in our communities? And so I love this list because I would say my vote is for resilience. And, you know, I think that the way I define it is that resiliency is what we develop from facing adversity. And that the more adversity we face, the more resilient we are. And it becomes sort of like a toolkit, right? And inside that resiliency toolkit is the creativity and reciprocity and stick-to-itness and reliability. Like, I feel like all these things sort of roll up into that. And so when we're talking about top talent, I think, you know, the top talent in my organization are folks that are incredibly resilient and can step into change, you know, because we're in an industry that's always changing. The world is changing. Like, look at where we are right now. Like, we're in the center, the apex of change. And that the folks who can not only stand in that, but then manage change. Those are the top performers in my view.
I think all of these ideas kind of draw together. I've noticed that everybody is representing a different field, right? An industry, and you all have different entry points, which is one of the reasons I wanted you to introduce yourselves and think about that context. If we're going to take top talent a little bit deeper, that question, do you as panelists believe that there are universal traits that can go across industries? That if you want to position yourself as being top talent, that you would share with individuals in the audience? On top of that, I'll ask, do you have specific industry things that you think would make people stand out based on your own experiences? So who wants to get started? I'm going to ask, we'll change the order a little bit. How about we go to Isaac first? Isaac, what do you think?
I think for me, you know, being an HR professional, again, who worked across diverse industries, and also company cultures, I think one of the key traits or talents that really go across each one of them is absolutely resiliency. But I think also a key one, I'm going to fall back on really being innovative. You know, top talent is really about you know, elevating whatever your required competencies and skill level may be, kind of taking it to the next level. And I think as a top talent, you kind of need to be keen and aware of that in order to kind of move within the organization that you're at in order to kind of, you know, kind of break through the ceiling.
Great. Claudine, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a great question. It's a great question to sort of lead us in to this conversation, because I think one of the key traits is being bold. I think at every single level, you need to always think about being bold. Don't worry about being different or seeming different or having a different perspective or point of view. And I'll give you a quick example. Somebody on my team is writing their first op-ed this weekend, and they're writing their first op-ed, and it's going to be published in an industry trade next week. And he's coming up with his own point of view. And I said to him, I said, just remember that it's your point of view. There's no right or wrong. But what's great is that you are going to come forth with your own point of view. And there are so many people who are very sort of passively just listen and absorb content and absorb information. But then what makes you stand out is when you are bold enough to actually make a statement or have a proposition or have a point of view. So I think really being bold and being confident in your boldness, there's never any sort of right or wrong. It's the fact that you even have the wherewithal to be bold that is critical.
Thank you. Marissa, I have a follow-up question, kind of related to that, but let's say, you're an HR professional. How would you respond to an individual who says, I want to be top talent. I want to be that person. What could you say from kind of an HR perspective that they should do?
Right. That's a great question. It starts with getting clarity. You have to understand how your organization is defining what a top talent is. And in general, when you look across the board, most of the time they think about three things. One, being a high performer. So can you consistently get quality results over and over and over again? So that's like the price of entry to getting in the top talent conversation. Then they're going to look at your potential. Do you have the ability to move beyond the current role you're in? Do you express or show and demonstrate some of the skills that will allow them to leverage your expertise to help impact the business in the future? These are different things that they're going to look at as well. And last but not least, they're going to take in consideration your aspirations. So what do you want to be when you grow up? Who do you want to be when you grow up? Where do you want to be when you grow up? These are different things that you're going to have to reflect on and kind of marry that with how they're defining top talent and what you want to do. And it's critical because you can actually hit those top things of being a high performer, having the potential, but if your aspirations don't align with that, then that can remove you from the top talent list. So you have to take into consideration what are those trade-offs and then decide if you want to go all in.
I think that's great. And Sandy and Melvin, I left you two together for a reason. Sandy, you have this idea of looking across the United States since IC Stars is in multiple locations. And Melvin, you also have this idea of looking internationally, globally at these ideas. So I wanted to ask Sandy first and Melvin second, as we kind of move across that. When you're dealing with an organization, Sandy, that is in multiple places, let's say you have someone in Milwaukee who wants to get a promotion and they want to be recognized as top talent, right? We're in the digital age, we're in COVID-19, there's a lot of digitalness. How do you get yourself seen in that capacity? You're muted again.
Sorry. Yeah, it's such a great question. How do we get ourselves seen? And in our culture at IC Stars, you are able to get yourself seen when you make other people look good. And it's a funny thing because you wouldn't really think so, but really we're all of us, part of our job is to make our managers look good. And that, in the ways that we celebrate other people and give them credit for what they're doing and highlight some awesome things that folks are doing, even though in the moment we're shining a light on somebody else, everybody else is seeing like, wow, that's a really good person. Like she put that person ahead of her and she's really shining a light on them. And that what that does is it actually starts the profile of you as a manager, someone who can support and help other people. And so if you're trying to grow into a management role, the thing to think about is how do you let other people shine? And how do you sort of stand them up? And that's like the quickest way to getting promoted is that people see you as someone who's an enabler and someone who helps other people. And at the end of the day, you make other people look good.
That's a great point. Melvin, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Kind of riffing off what Sandy said. I think if you are somebody who's looking to be in management and you're trying to get to that level, one of the things you can always do is understand not just your business, but the businesses around you. So if you become a landscape person as a junior, you kind of see what lanes you can kind of get in, what swim lanes you like, which ones you don't, where your friends are, where the folks who know things that you don't know, or folks that know that you can help with things that you know that they don't know. And I would say if you're a manager, you actually take a lot more closer approach to what Sandy talked about, where you make people look good. So one of the, I'll just say more fruitful things I even did in my career was actually take a bunch of radio buyers and find out what transferable skills they had and turn them into digital people It took me like 3 months to figure it out, but like these guys were buying Pandora and buying Spotify and buying Instagram in 2 to 3 months. And prior to that, my conversations with other management was maybe we need to get new people. At the end of the exercise, we didn't need new people. We just figured out how to take the transferable skills of the folks we had and we turned it into something we could use for clients. So I think, trying to take that approach when you're in management is definitely a thing that takes you a lot further than kind of operating in a silo and figuring out, what 1 or 2 things I do well without kind of spreading that across and finding out what other people do well as well and like how to make them shine.
So I wanted to highlight, we have a question in the chat box on what you just said, Melvin, and it says, what if you are already operating at the management level and would like to be identified as top talent and move forward? What would be your recommendation?
I think the last example I gave was one that I used when I was management, and it kind of helped elevate me. And then I think the other things you can do, at least from that standpoint, is find a specialty. Like if there's something you're really good at, like once you become management, that's the time to like make that call out and make that part of your job shine. If you have a particular thing you're good at and it actually is applicable to your job or it adds to your job or someone else's, that's the time to kind of call that out, because that actually does single you out as somebody who then could make the jump to another position, another region. They flew me in particular to Poland to fix the lottery because they figured I'd be able to do it. They said, hey, we know you don't know Polish. We'll work on that, but we know you can fix the problem they have. And they put me on a plane in like 48-hour cycle and made me go fix stuff. So I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't shown that like I was already kind of adaptable and had some kind of transferable things in play before, that kind of opportunity presented itself.
And I wanted to highlight, because Marissa is going to go next too, but inside of what you just said were 2 additional points. You highlighted that you were upskilling in other areas as well, which will be a subsequent question I'm going to follow up on. What that means across the board. But Marissa, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that perspective, and being able to be solutions focused, that is going to allow you to shine within the organization. I would also add that it's important to understand what is expected of you within your role. So going back to the clarity part, because a part of that is performing different projects and things you have to accomplish. And then you have those leadership responsibilities that you have. You have a group of team members that you have to develop. So it's not just about the things that you accomplish on your own, but it's how are you influencing people to get results? So really focusing in on not just being able to own that by yourself, but how can you influence others and make them better and overall make the organization better.
Yeah, so I wanted to transition, and I think these are excellent points, and I think they all connect to not only what's happening internally. So you're talking about being reflective of your own practices, but also contextualizing them in your organization. So this takes double work, right? So you have to look inward as well as outward. So this transitions, I think, really greatly into this kind of next series of questions where we're talking about upskilling, right? One of the biggest things we've seen come through in panels before is that BIPOC peoples lack the confidence, and there's research that supports this, to promote themselves or to promote each other, right? So, the next 2 questions talk about how do you promote others, and then how do you promote yourself confidently? And I'm gonna kind of highlight this to people. If you're not aware, obviously we have biases that exist in our system, the systemic issues related to BIPOC. So these things about potential fear of retaliation for standing up or being too loud or being too vocal are at the forefront of a lot of BIPOC people's minds. So I want all of you to think about that in your own experiences, and I'm going to go through the list of everyone again. How about we start with Isaac? What do you think to address this issue?
I think first, for confidence, I'm going to say rid yourself of the self-imposed conformity. I think that's where it starts. Embrace your authentic and unique self and live out your entrepreneurial and professional passions and your dreams. For me personally, I kind of said conformity because, I'm Gen X. And we were, entering the workforce back in those days, you were taught to conform. You really wasn't being your true self. So for me, building confidence is really first learn really to how to love all of you, the good and the bad. Meaning, I want you to focus on. I began to focus on my strengths, not on my weaknesses. In corporate America, they can tend to get on that 10% thing that you don't do well, and then that's where the focus. And that's what shoots your confidence down. But let's not do that. Let's focus on where you have a passion. Let's focus on your strengths. Let's focus on fine-tuning your character, not whatever reputation you may have. And then also let's just focus on your overall blessings. At the very end of the day, as a Black and Latinx employee, you need to be better than the best. We were all taught that. That still remains true. But with that said, you have to love who you are and stand up for what you believe in. And in that, have fun, be flexible, be agile. Then I believe you'll be viewed as a credible talent within your organization.
Thank you, Isaac. Claudine, what do you think? You're muted right now. 1 second.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that I'm following Isaac's comment because I completely agree. And I think it ties back to what I said previously, which is about being bold, and having the confidence to be bold. I personally think that not getting caught, and this sounds very simple and very trite and very basic, but to me, it's a superpower in life and in business. And that is not getting so caught up in what other people are thinking about you. Because once you get so caught up in that, you will miss so many opportunities. You will get so distracted, and you will get so thrown off your chosen path. And I know that sounds very sort of kumbaya, but it really is an absolute superpower. Not really caring. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying this in a flippant way, but really owning yourself, which is what Isaac was saying, and not really caring what other people think. Because the majority of the time, when you are being bold, when you are being confident, the majority of your external audience is actually cheerleading you on. Even if they can't do it themselves, they're actually saying, you know what, good for her or good for him. He did that or she said this. So really, and I'm glad I followed Isaac because I was listening to you speaking and I was like, yes, exactly what he was saying. But really, it's a superpower and it's going to continue to be a superpower, especially as we're living in this world of social media where everyone just, especially for Gen X, everyone's so caught up in how many likes, what are people saying? Do people like me? Am I getting engagement? You have to be bold and be confident and be happy within yourself if you get 1 like or whether you get 1 million likes. And that's just going to continue with the younger, especially younger audiences. That is going to continue to be a major superpower as they go through their careers.
I think that's a really good point, and it connects to a point inside of the chat box, which kind of follows up on this question. How do you build and maintain confidence and overcome self-doubt when you may have feelings of imposter syndrome? So I'm going to Claudine, if you want to answer, but I was also going to ask Sandy next.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was thinking about imposter syndrome yesterday and a thought came to me and I hadn't thought about this before. So it's a new thought that I'll share with you. I often think that imposter syndrome is actually a symptom of somebody who's a really high achiever. It's a symptom of somebody who's a high achiever because you feel like an imposter because you know how much further you want to go. You know how much more you want to do. So when you're getting all the accolades, when you're getting, all the congratulations and all the praise, you're actually thinking, well, I haven't even done half of what I want yet. So I don't deserve any of this because I haven't done it yet. So I was just thinking that last night, actually, that I think, if you're feeling imposter syndrome, it's probably because you're a high achiever and you've got so much more to do, and lean into that. You're feeling an imposter because you've got more to do. So lean into it.
I love the positive framing, and I hope that's something that the audience is noticing as well. One of the big things about developing any of these skills is believing that you can, right? You have to have that belief in yourself. That's that idea. I told you the juxtaposition. I love that word. But if you look internally, you also have to look externally. You can't just do one or the other because you'll be missing something. But Sandy, I also wanted to ask, because there's a supplemental question, so you can answer that first question. But part of this question, because you have an organization that's 20 years old, how do you reinvent yourself after 20 years of employment with various skills when you're suddenly out of work? What would you do?
Great question. Well, first of all, I have to say, I was only 5 when I founded the organization. So just getting that out of the way. But I love the imposter syndrome question because everybody has it. I don't care who you are, no matter what, everybody has it. And I'll tell you, the last time I had it, and I really think it's like a voice in your head that says, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They're going to find out any minute. Oh my God, and you are kind of getting out of your body about it. And for me, I was at a crazy meeting that Mark Benioff from Salesforce, the CEO, had invited me to. And it was 20 other CEOs, like the big CEOs in the city. And I show up in my pink jacket and I'm like, just be the nicest person in the room and everything will be fine. And I'm really like, oh my gosh. Like, it was like I was, having lunch with Prince and Michael Jackson and like all these people at the same time, right? And I'm in my head thinking all these things. And what I realized was that I wasn't even being present to the conversation that was happening around the table. That my imposter voice had taken me out of the context. And that's where I was doing my job. So I think that allowing that voice to be louder and to give into it actually prevents us from doing our work. And so as soon as I was able to turn the dial a little bit and listen to what they were saying, I realized they were saying things that weren't even true. Like they were talking about poverty from a place of, we know how to solve poverty, and it just wasn't right, And so my voice in this situation was a really, really important voice. And that if I had spent more time in my imposter land, I wouldn't have been able to say what needed to be said at that very moment. And so I think that that's important to know as well, that everybody has it. And we have to get back in, So the second part of your question was about what do we do when we're out of work, when we, and it's so good because I think sometimes we confuse who we are with what we do. Mm. And I think it's also a uniquely American thing too, right? Like you go to a party and people say, hi, I'm Sandy. Nice to meet you, Isaac. What do you do? Like that's a normal question. And then Isaac would be like, well, hey, I'm the blappity blah, and that we define our value by what we do. So I'm like, oh, good. Isaac's a good person for me to talk to. But that, Dr. Rogers, forget it. I'm over here, and that we do that even, without even realizing we're doing it anymore. And so what does it mean if we're out of work? Like suddenly, are we just not valuable at all? Well, I would reverse that and say you are most valuable. And that time that you're out of work is like your tree time. This is when, instead of looking at the tree, looking from above in a plane and seeing the tree, you actually have the time to lay down under that tree and look up and figure out, where do you want to be? And how do you get there, right? And that you are at your most valuable when you're dreaming and then manifesting those dreams. And I think that this narrative that we aren't anything until we get our job back is what destroys all that dreaming.
I think that's great. Marissa, you said you had a comment too?
Yes. So I wanted to get back to the imposter syndrome and really point out a fact around, you have to understand what triggers it. So what was shared earlier were great lead-ins to that. It could be people, it could be the environment, it could be your own limiting beliefs, but that's really important in understanding how you can address that imposter syndrome as you go forward. So for myself, one of the times I really dealt with it was I was in a toxic work environment. And I even questioned if I wanted to stay in HR. And I really struggled during that time. And so one of the things that really helped one of the things that really helped me during that time was the group of people that I had around me. When I couldn't pour into myself, they poured into me to get me back to the point where I could remind myself who I was, what I've done, and be my own hype person. So it's very important that you have a good team around you, people who support you, whether you call them your personal board of directors, your squad, your homies. We're inclusive around here, so whatever you call them, you know, keep them around, and make sure you're leveraging them in that process. So I just wanted to point that out.
And I think that's a great transition into our second poll, because everyone here knows that there are the things that they want to resolve, but they're looking for solutions from all of you as experts. So I'm going to actually pose the next polling question, and then we're going to go through everyone and see what are your thoughts about actualizing success in yourself. We've talked about a few of them. I've given a couple of examples, and you'll see that in this launching the poll. But I want you to really think about, what are the ways in which you make yourself successful? You know, we've given a few of them. We've highlighted a couple others here, but does anybody have any thoughts about additional things we haven't covered yet? I want to go to Melvin. What are your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I kind of like the whole idea around practices and behaviors, because it kind of helps you add what.
I think we lost Melvin.
I think I scared the crap out of some of the people that I've spoken to in the past, because I tell them I've raced cars for 18 years, and it kind of doesn't meet my business profile nor my my appearance. When I kind of roll up and talk to people, they're like, "What do you mean you race cars?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I do," but it doesn't necessarily meet the behaviors I have at work. But sometimes it helps when I'm working with somebody like NASCAR and they're trying to figure out how to talk to Black people. Somebody found me because it was like, hey, that guy races cars and he works in advertising and NASCAR, and Bubba's having problems right now. So that ended up where, you know, those things came together. But I think finding areas in your job where you can have your passion points kind of live, finding areas where you can find places to be curious, or if you are up to the whole idea of training yourself on new things so that maybe later on in life you can learn to do something else. I actually used my job in advertising to learn how to cook so I could be a pretty decent chef, and that's going to be my retirement job. Like, if you had asked me that 15 years ago, it wouldn't have happened. So I think the whole idea of having your practices and behaviors and almost kind of playing with them between what you do at work, what you do with your professional group versus your personal group, is actually a really good way to kind of play out how you want to see success and talent work within what you do. Because originally I was supposed to be an engineer and an architect, and that was what success was supposed to be. Where I'm at now is completely different than that. And I started off that way in college. I actually started in college to be an architect and engineer. Now I'm in advertising and internet guide, which are not even close to the same thing. So I'd say you'd be surprised where you can go if you kind of play on those different strings and see where it takes you.
And I think what you just highlighted, Melvin, is a connection back to Marissa, right? Where Marissa was talking about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And here's the thing, the only person who can limit you from what you want to be is you. That's the thing that you have to take ownership of. Many times we turn over that authority in our own lives to other people, to our companies, to our friends, to our families, to our social media platforms. Mm-hmm. And if you're really focusing on that idea of building confidence, the best way to build confidence, and I'll just say it even for myself, I'm going to give you this as a personal example. I became a professor at the age of 20. So I want you to know that I was teaching college students, and they were mostly older than me. There was such an imposter syndrome that I encountered about, I shouldn't be here. But here's the reason why I confidently knew that I did. I was really good at what I did. I got really good grades. My professors supported all the work that I did. And I actually wrote and posted that on my wall, because for the first semester of teaching, it was really hard. And that acknowledgement, so I'm going to say this as being like self-reflective, it's okay. It's okay if it's hard. If you're out of a job right now, it's okay. It's okay for that to happen. And it's okay for you to be in a position where you're not feeling great. But what I would challenge all of you to do is to continue to reframe that thinking, right? To recognize that this is just one moment in time for you, and there'll be plenty of moments in time. I'm going to show the end of polling, and then I'm going to ask Claudine, what are your thoughts? And everyone can see the polls about what our thoughts are. So a lot of people thought about reflecting on practices and behaviors and active listening and seeking advice. Claudine, what do you think? Do you agree with these as being the top areas, or do you see something else? You're muted right now.
Yeah, sorry. I absolutely do. And I was wavering between reflecting on practices and behaviors and reframing thinking. Those are the two that I was wavering between. So I'm going to choose two. I think reframing your thinking, and I'll just give an example of that. As somebody who, I've worked in corporate and I've been an entrepreneur for the last 10 years. Constantly, you are reframing your thinking constantly. And I'll just give one example. So you're working on a pitch. It's that pitch that always comes through to all agencies at Christmas time, and you end up working through Christmas Eve on it. It's just the classic Christmas pitch that comes in, and you spend a ton of time working on it and put a ton of resources and effort into it, and then you don't get the business. And it's an account that you really, really wanted, or a business that you really, really wanted to work on. And when I first started out, it was crushing to me when I would lose, or I wouldn't win. I would say I didn't lose it. I wouldn't win the business. It was crushing. And I remember somebody saying to me, nothing you ever do is wasted. Nothing you ever work on is wasted. You will always come back to it, and you always revisit it. And that has gone on to be absolutely true. There are things that if I'm doing a pitch now, if I'm working on something now, I'll go through my archives and I'm like, oh, I did something similar in 2012, or I did a presentation in 2013 and spoke about X. That's going to be great for what I'm doing now. So that's just one example of just reframing your thinking in order to stay positive and buoyed and motivated. And in terms of practices and behaviors, there's something that I really want to mention in terms of positioning yourself as top talent, and I think now is a good place to mention it, is that I recommend, whenever I'm doing personal branding sessions, I say to everybody, you are who Google says you are. And so I basically encourage everybody to go and set up their own website, their own personal website. It's a simple practice, but when somebody I don't know, when somebody Googles Marissa Lee, what's going to come up? When somebody Googles Mel Wilson, what's going to come up? Typically, what comes up is your LinkedIn, typically, or maybe your company. But people do business with individuals, not with entities, right? So I strongly advocate for everybody to go to GoDaddy, save. If you don't want to set up a website now, you don't have to. Just save it. Prevent somebody else from cyber squatting on your name, and just hold it until you're ready to use it. But it's a practical thing which I've been saying for years, and it continues to be important. You are who Google says you are, so own your own story, save your own website, so that when they go to marissalee.com, Marissa, I'm just using you, Marissa, because you've got this lovely blue background, so you really stand out to me. So when they Google marissalee.com, they see Marissa presented in the way that Marissa wants to present herself to the world. They're not going through pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on Google. They've got everything there in one place, and Marissa is telling her own story. And I advocate every single person listening, if that's one thing you sort of remember from what I've said, is to do that.
Great. Go ahead, Marissa.
So I want to chime in on that, because I totally agree with everything that you said, especially the point of telling your own story. You want to position yourself as a top talent, not within an organization,
right,
but it should span across the board. So I'm into basketball. So LeBron James, he's a top talent regardless of what team he's on. It's not based on the team. It's based on him as a person. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep that in mind as you are continuing to position yourself. I too agree with reframe your thinking and reflect your practices and behaviors. From the reflect on your practices and behaviors, being self-aware is critical in the workplace, because that's one of the things that we look at, and I say we because I'm still, in that space. We look at when we are working with top talents or employees in general of, do they understand where their areas of opportunities are? Do they understand their strengths? How are they positioning their strengths? And the only way you can really do that is if you take the time to reflect and be aware of where you're good at and where you need to continue to improve. So an example of what you can do there, do your own individual SWOT analysis. Take the time to think about your strengths, your weakness, your opportunities for continual growth, and things that could hinder you from getting to that place. And then the last thing I'll share from reframing your thinking, I am very big on affirmations and mindset, and from the standpoint of, you have to first believe it if you're going to achieve it. And I claim what I'm going to end up doing. And you have to write that vision and make it plain, and then go and materialize it. And when you see that, going back to Dr. Rihanna's point earlier about being in school and writing those things down, when you see that and you continue to rehearse that and tell yourself you can do it and what you can do, you will start seeing those manifestations. And then that's going to give you more confidence. And then nobody's going to be able to do anything with you because you can do it. So just keep that in mind.
Great. Sandy, do you want to contribute?
Yeah, so, I think definitely, and I completely agree with everything Marissa and Claudine said fully. I think a nuance to also reframing your thinking is this notion of being visible. And I'll share a story quickly with you. It was early on in IC Stars, and I was taking all of the students to a networking event. And and so they were like off doing their networking, and I was just kind of chilling and sitting back when this woman came up to me and said, "So how do you like the program?" Because she thought maybe I was an intern, and I said, "Oh, thank you. That's such a compliment. Really, I'm actually the co-founder." And then she said, "Can I talk to you for a minute in the hallway?" And I was like, "Huh, that's weird." So, but anyway, I went out with her in the hallway. And then she proceeded to cuss me out. Like, cuss me out like, do I need to take off my earrings? Like, cuss me out like nobody has talked to me like that since I was in high school. Like, my mama didn't even cuss me out like that. Like, who is this woman? I'm not even hearing what she's saying. I'm just feeling heat, like, on my face. Like, what am I going to do? If I fight with this woman, what does that mean? Like, am I going to walk back in there? Like, and my mind is like, what, I'm going through all this. And then finally, I just tuned back in. And this is what I heard her say. She said, "How dare you, bleep, 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 be invisible? How dare you?" All this time, I thought IC Stars was founded by a white lady with great shoes. And I had no idea that there was some sister behind it. How dare you? How dare you for all of us who wouldn't even dream of starting an organization like that because we think we can't do that. How dare you? How dare you for all your students and your future students to not realize that you are indeed the leader of this organization? How dare you? Bleep, 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 be invisible. And now remember, like, my face is hot. I'm like ready. I'm in my fight or flight. I'm like, oh, oh. And I had to shut it all down and just say, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because weeks later, the other co-founder would leave the organization, and I would be sitting in a board meeting where my entire board was saying, all right, well, we have to do a national search for the executive director, and what search firm should we use? And they're talking about all this, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what are they saying? Like, I'm sitting right here. Like, why? It's me. Can't you see me? And in fact, they couldn't, because I had been invisible. Mm-hmm. And that was the moment that I kind of turned around and said, no, I am the CEO of this organization, and that's how it's going to be. And they were like, oh, of course. Yes. What were we thinking? Like, it was no big deal to them. But to me, it was like, what's happening? And that being invisible was such a being visible or being invisible was such a powerful realization for me.
You know, I think that is interesting because I love that you transitioned so well for me to asking Melvin and Isaac a question about being males, right? And there's a question posted in the chat box about imposter syndrome usually being associated with kind of a female experience. I wanted to ask, and we'll kind of go back around, but, you know, Melvin and Isaac, do you feel that there is an invisibility factor for, you know, men of color? And in that regard, about, do you think it's a hindrance for also breaking through the middle or becoming or being viewed as top talent, similar to what Sandy is saying, where there could be people in the room that don't see you and your views? And what do you do about that? Melvin, if you could go first, and then
I think
Isaac.
it definitely is. Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think you run into a couple different things. One, guys don't really admit we're doing the imposter syndrome thing that well, because we're always on the fake it or make it thing. It actually doesn't even matter whether it's work, picking up a girl, dancing with somebody, talking about how much money you have, looking at your car. We're always fake it or make it first. You know, unless we're talking to our core group of people. So guys have always been bad at going and admitting that, like, hey, I'm dealing with this, right? Like, and then if you throw on the men of color, who are you really talking to in corporate America? Because if you actually do rise up to the point where you're having imposter syndrome, you're the only one there. You got, I mean, at least when I first started doing corporate, it was like me, the dude in the mailroom. I mean, I had a job where I actually owned a building. And the security guys, for the first 6 years we were there, didn't know it was my building. They were like, oh, delivery's around back. And I just didn't say anything because I was like, I didn't want to deal with it. And it was almost the curse out conversation, Sandy. I'm like living through that because one of my partners came in and said, you gonna let him talk to you like that? I was like, I just was kind of going to the elevator. He's like, nah, like, you see that name on the building? It's like, no, that's one of the people who owns the company who owns this building. And I had become so invisible to it because you would deal with it all the time that you just didn't want to deal with it. So I think it definitely is there. I've experienced it when I've had my own company. I've experienced it when I've been part of a larger corporate group, almost to the point where I had to remind a CEO we met before. I actually signed their deal to get them financed with a VC. And these guys forgot who I was, right? And I'm like, I had to remind them. But that happens a lot when it comes to us being invisible in the room. And I think it is something to it where we almost have to call ourselves out in a lot of cases, because if you don't, people will forget that you took that more important role in the room when you're in there. So I learned that the hard way as well, and did get talking to by another person of color as well. So I was having flashbacks while you were going through your story there, Sandy.
Yes, I absolutely echo the same thing. You know, me being a 6'4", 250-pound dude, is like, how can I possibly be invisible to anyone? But I've had many, many moments of being invisible, or being accused of being the security of a particular organization. I'm like, really? But one thing, you know, that, you know, for me was first, give yourself grace, and don't harp on the things that may be fighting against you, but let's work for the things that's working for you. So this really giving yourself permission to really step across the aisle, to really build professional relationships with individuals. It may not be in your immediate space, but break down barriers, you know, of unfamiliarity. And at the very end of the day, you know, continue to be proficient in your craft and your discipline. Of course, we need to excel and be the best of that. But more importantly, you know, as we kind of been saying all night, focus and love you. Because if you don't love you, you will get caught in a trap where you feel like, oh my God. Like I said earlier, it's, you know, my self-imposed conformity. That was me trying to conform when it was like, wait a second, why am I conforming? To touch base quickly on the whole job component, when you do lose a job, I lost a job before, and oh my God, my job was my career. It was like, wait a second, you have to really define who you are, love who you are, and speak to your craft from a place of passion. And I think once you do that, to what the young lady said earlier, Miss Marissa, you can be, LeBron James, and regardless of what team you on, you are the best basketball player or whatever you may do from your job discipline. You're the best person, no matter where you're positioned around the globe.
So I wanted to highlight and recap a couple, and I think this has been an excellent dialogue. So I want to make sure that the audience understands a few key points. Notice how each of our panelists has been talking about this internal reflection, about all of this comes from inside of you. It all comes from the idea of how you build yourself up. It also, we haven't talked about this yet either, but who you surround yourself with, right? One of the points is, do you have a mentor? Do you have positive individuals in your life that you can come to? Do you have a network of individuals, even when something is going wrong, right, that you can rely on? Do you know somebody who's gone through a similar situation? Like Isaac just mentioned, he's lost his job. You can look at somebody who is successful and make assumptions about them, but are you willing to ask the questions? Have you ever lost your job before? I don't know how to deal with this. I'm lost right now because I'm transitioning careers. Are you reaching out to your networks to see if somebody else is transitioning? Have you looked online to see blog posts or articles that are about people transitioning? Have you looked at what's going through COVID right now and how people are locating jobs? I'm going to put on my professor hat for 5 seconds. We talk about this in academia as joining the academic conversation. It means before you make any assumptions about what you do or believe, you do the research so that you can position yourself in the knowledge that already exists before jumping out into the world, because you can jump out and you won't know where you're going and it could make it uncertain. But if you have the research, you don't have to. So I wanted to pause there because we're actually a couple minutes before the end of our session. I wanted to thank everyone who's been on this panel, and I wanted to give everybody an opportunity, just a second, to say maybe their final thoughts. What's your lasting point that you'd like to leave with everyone? At least a thought or a phrase that you want everybody to go away with. So I'm going to start with Sandy, and then I'll go down the line. Just remember you're on mute.
My lasting, I guess I'll go with being visible and saying yes. Like, do the things that make you feel uncomfortable. You get invited to go to a weird bowling thing. Just say yes and see what happens. It's the things that we are most trepidatious about that end up being the most powerful for us.
Claudine.
Well, this panel is about how to position yourself as top talent. So I'm going to lead with a very practical recommendation, which is what I said earlier, is you are who Google says you are. When people meet you and they want to find out more about you, they go online and they'll Google straight away. I highly recommend that everybody saves a URL and launches their own personal website that cuts across sectors, cuts across industries, that is just presenting you to the world and owning your own story and presenting your own story to the world in your own words.
Great, thank you. Marissa.
I would say get clarity, so then you are able to be strategic about the steps that you want to take within your organization or outside of your organization. So doing that reflection, and that's going to help you be able to build that confidence and further champion yourself wherever you want to take your career. So keeping those 3 things in mind: clarity, confidence, and championing yourself.
Great, thank you. Isaac.
I would say first, give yourself grace. First and foremost, be proficient in your chosen family, job family, or discipline. Remember, you need to navigate across. You need to be inventive or within your particular craft. You need to be agile and flexible, but most importantly, focus, have fun at what you're doing. Because if you have no passion about it, you won't be the top talent at it.
And Melvin.
Sure. just kind of three basic things that I've kind of always carried with me. Knowledge, preparation, purpose. Know yourself and know your business. Prepare for the good and the bad that might happen when you walk into a room. Getting arrows shot in your back or in your front and walking into a room that you don't know are coming is never good. And then have a purpose for being there. And if other people don't know it, tell them. So, you know, KPP, that has kind of carried me pretty far in just trying to both teach talent and then kind of use it to help elevate myself.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you again to all the panelists. I think this has been a great conversation. I hope that everyone has gained from what they've learned today. I know that I have. I'm going to share really quickly that you can locate us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. You'll actually see copies of this recording probably posted in the next few days. And if you have any questions or comments, I would say, please reach out to us. We at Black and Brilliant are interested in helping people to upskill in a variety of ways. We'll have additional panels coming up. So again, thank you very much for being here. It was my pleasure being the moderator, and I wish you all a wonderful evening. So thank you again. Have a good night.